Hello and welcome to another episode of India and Global Left. If you are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button. Also consider becoming a YouTube member, a Patreon, or donate a small amount given in the link in the description box. Without further ado, let me welcome our guest tonight, Professor Mohammad Marandi. Professor Marandi teaches at University of Tehran in Iran. Professor Marandi, welcome back to India and Global Left.
Thank you very much for having me.
I wanted to start by asking you about your sense of how the war has progressed, given the mainstream media and Western media has given us a completely one-sided coverage of the conflict. They have been using statements of officials from Israeli and the American side as if these are facts. They don't do the same on the Iranian side. They use statements like Israel pummeling Iran, while they don't do the same for things that are very similar. I'm talking about destructions of building. They also don't discriminate attacks on civilians as opposed to attacks on military when it comes to one side, but not the other, and so on. So if you could give us a sense of your sense of the progress, how the war has progressed.
Well, to be very blunt, if you want to follow the news on Iran, you should not watch any of the Western media nor the Arabic media. Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and Western media, they're all in the American camp. TRT, these are all NATO or NATO affiliated. So the best thing is to look to alternative media. And I think on my Twitter account, the people who I follow, some of those media outlets are much more credible, including your own, because you have guests who have very differing viewpoints than the viewpoints that are allowed on Western media. And I think history has shown that the what is being said in alternative media, at least in the alternative media that I follow, is much more accurate and has been much more accurate for the last few years than anything we've seen in the Western media. In fact, when the war started, when the war of aggression against the Iranian people started, Trump said that he was surprised that Iran would respond in the Persian Gulf region. Well, if he had been listening to what I've been saying or what others like me have been saying, he wouldn't have been surprised. And that surprise stems from the fact that the West produces its own propaganda and believes its own propaganda, and therefore carries out policies based on that propaganda, and then their heads hit a brick wall. Just a few hours ago, Trump demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. And RT just asked me about that. And I told him, well, during the 12-day war, in the middle of that war, I think on the seventh day, I think, he demanded unconditional surrender. And we know how that turned out. So one shouldn't be too impressed by Western media and Western propaganda. And we know how they functioned in the Gaza genocide. We know how they tried to hide Israeli crimes. Initially, when they would bomb hospitals, they would try to claim that it was the resistance. Then they tried to claim that there were tunnels underneath hospitals. Then the Israelis started just destroying so many hospitals that they decided to ignore it. And it got so ruthless and filthy and dirty, these attacks, that the Israeli soldiers would actually go into a hospital and unplug the incubators with infants inside them and leave them to die. And there was no reaction in the Western media that was of any real value, whether in the Guardian or the New York Times or Fox News or Sky News. They're all the same when it comes to Zionism, when it comes to the oligarchy that rules over the West. They may be a bit different in tone, and some of them may be somewhat more critical, but fundamentally they're the same. So, and we saw that during the State of the Union address of Trump, The only place where all of the senators and the Congress people got up and clapped like seals was when he was attacking Iran. So that is the state of affairs. On day one, they slaughtered almost 170 little girls at their elementary school, and Western media didn't care. And on that same day, they killed a large number of young women in a different city, almost 20, I think, who were playing volleyball in a gymnasium. That also went unreported. And they are carpet bombing Tehran, literally, every day on multiple occasions. They destroyed many hospitals. Actually, on the first day, one of the first things that they did was bomb a hospital in Tehran, and they destroyed the IVF clinic. And that hospital, which is a private hospital, is no longer used, and many women who want to have babies have lost that opportunity. This is the viciousness of the regime, that whether it's the Trump regime or the Netanyahu regime. They bombed the Red Crescent Society, both the central building in Tehran, but also in the provinces. They bombed the National Emergency Center, which is like a first respond. They're in charge of first responders. Why do they do that? Because they want more people killed. If you recall, during those violent riots where they staged a military, something like a coup, there was a semi-coup attempt. They were destroying ambulances, many ambulances, and many fire trucks. Why were they doing that? Because they wanted the fires to rage and they wanted the injured to die. This is the same model. In fact, I now believe that what they did back then was to help them today, because a lot of damage was caused to these organizations that save people's lives and their homes and their belongings. So this is the reality of the war. Since they failed to destroy the underground missile cities, since they failed to destroy the underground missile factories and the underground drone cities, they're seeking revenge on ordinary people. And therefore, they're carrying mass slaughter across the board. Just, I think it was yesterday that they carried out a major massacre in Shiraz City and bombed a children's park and an ambulance center that were right beside each other. It's obvious that these are intentional. All of these are on the map. There's nothing hidden about these buildings. Just like the school, you could find it on Google Map. They've bombed multiple schools. So this is a sinister war by two evil regimes that are supported by the collective West and regional despots. And sadly, regimes like the Erdogan regime, they're also helping, because Erdogan allows NATO to fly AWACS jets to collect information from Iran. And he also allows the US to use its bases in Turkey for the war effort against Iran.
I wanted to briefly ask you about the Arabic media, Al Jazeera in particular, given a lot of people from the global south as well follows it. Obviously, it has more resources. It gives us more updates than, let's say, Press TV, and so people take recourse to that. We have known how biased it has been in the case of Syria, in Ukraine, but this time around, it has been particularly brazen. I wonder what your thoughts are on Al Jazeera.
Yes, Al Jazeera is a tool. Qatar is a proxy of the United States. We know that Hamas, they have offices in Qatar because the United States and the Israeli regime asked them to do so. Only the naive believe that Qatar has any real is doing anything to really support the Palestinian people. In the case of Erdogan and Qatar, Palestine is basically a tool or an opportunity for public diplomacy. So they talk about Palestine, they say the right things often, and they look different than Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and the other countries of the region. But in reality, they're the same. Remember when Trump went to Egypt and did that monkey show? Erdogan was there, and the Qataris were present there as well. Al Jazeera is a tool of Qatar, and Qatar is a proxy of the United States. In Syria, they supported ISIS and Al Qaeda. They supported the American project to destroy Syria. And in Ukraine, of course, they supported NATO. And now, of course, they're supporting the Americans and the Israeli regime. And remember, Qatar hosts CENTCOM, all of the bases, all of the US bases in the region. All these countries have US bases in Jordan, in Kuwait, in the Emirates, in Bahrain, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey. Of course, Turkey is NATO, but in any case, all these countries have US bases. The command center is in Qatar. CENTCOM is in Qatar. So the Qatari regime is always going to be in the US camp. And so one should not have any expectations about Al Jazeera Arabic or English. They are a tool of empire, but their tone is different from Al Arabiya. It has been, but they're no different. And of course, they have a lot of money. They have a lot of wealth to spend. And Qatar has a very large global media empire. And a lot of people are on the payroll. And those people don't want to lose their jobs. And they're well paid. And there are lots of so-called Islamic centers or mosques that are funded by Qatar. So a lot of, they have a huge network, just like the Emiratis do, just like Saudi Arabia does. And therefore, nothing that comes out of these countries that are firmly in the American camp should be taken at face value.
I wanted to come
that doesn't mean that they're not good people in Al Jazeera. That by no means do I say that. I have friends who work in Al Jazeera, Arabic and English. But the policy of the network and the direction of the network is something that is definitely in the interests of the United States.
I wanted to come to something you said, the phrase collective West. We know that the West has been always one in terms of giving propaganda cover, setting up narratives, how they work in UN and other bodies. But now the West has really become collective, even militarily. Australia has said that it is sending military assets. Virtually whole of Europe, I might be slightly exaggerating, but not much, from Italy to Spain to Greece, France, UK, they're all sending military assets from Cyprus to the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean. I wanted to ask you about the scale of the war. Is it still Iran versus US Israel, or is it Iran versus the West?
Oh no, as I said earlier, it's Iran versus the collective West and its regional proxies. And when I mean the collective West, I'm including the Erdogan regime as a part of NATO, and then the proxies, meaning in the Persian Gulf region and countries like Jordan. There's no doubt about that. Of course, it's not just Iran, it's also the axis of resistance in Iraq, in Yemen, in Lebanon. All of them are allies with one another. And of course, there are countries across the world that sympathize with Iran. And Russia and China are among them. But also, I think that across the world, from what I'm hearing through friends, across the world, people are on Iran's side. And public opinion across the global majority are supporting Iran. And much larger numbers of people than expected in Western countries despite the propaganda, despite the fact that the United States is the most heavily propagandized country in the world, its people in particular, and Europe comes in a close second, a lot of people are seeing through the propaganda. So Iran is not alone, and Iran is steadfast. And after the martyrdom of Ayatollah Khamenei, people have become more steadfast. And you may have seen huge crowds, the scenes every night, including tonight, we'll have them as well. Every night, people gather in different cities, including Tehran. In Tehran, they don't gather in one place, they gather in different neighborhoods because the Americans are bombing them. And they protest against the United States. They commemorate the martyr Ayatollah Khamenei. They demand revenge, and the crowds are in the millions in Tehran. Even though many people have left because the government has asked people who don't need to stay, if they have a place to go, to leave. And in other cities, the crowds are massive. And you may have seen the Friday prayers today in Tehran. It was huge. People who usually don't go, like myself, I don't go to Friday prayers, but I went this time round, and I saw that it was a huge, huge crowd. I don't know the numbers, but it was probably in the hundreds of thousands at least. But they were there, even though as the prayers were being held, the city was being bombed. So that shows the courage of the Iranian people. It shows that they're steadfast, and I have no doubt that the United States will fail. And as we've discussed before, the Iranians this is a country with thousands of years of civilization, and of course the influence of the grandson of the Holy Prophet, his martyrdom in Karbala, standing up against the oppressor of his time and in defense of the oppressed on the day of Ashura, that has huge cultural impact on Iranians. The day of his martyrdom is really the most important day of the Iranian calendar. The Iranian New Year is big. The different Eids are big, but this is something different. And if you walk in Tehran on Ashura or Tashur, you'll see the difference. You'll feel the difference. Even people who are not very religious, on that day, they go out and they participate often, most of them at least. And so this feeling of sympathy for the oppressed and this steadfastness against the oppressor, this makes them even more steadfast. And I think the fact that they saw that Ayatollah Khamenei refused to leave his home, even though he knew he was going to be a target, had a huge impact itself. He told during the last two wars, he was asked to leave his home and for them to take him somewhere else or to place him somewhere safe. And he said that many people who are struggling, they have nowhere to go. And since they can't go anywhere, I'm not going either. And that has had a huge impact itself.
I want to quickly ask you about the Iranian allies in Iraq in particular, given I have seen some analysts pro-Iranian being angry or not satisfied about the Sadrists, for example, not doing enough to combat the Americans and the Zionists. I mean, of course, I don't want to put this as if that the sole responsibility is with the Sadrists or other allies that Iran has in Iraq. But I'm just curious, what is the reading in Iran about what their allies are doing in Iraq in particular? Of course, I wanted to mention quickly that Hezbollah in Lebanon has made great sacrifice in support of Iran.
No, absolutely. But the fact is that the escalatory ladder is something that the axis of resistance wants to manage. Right now, Iran can fire many more missiles and many more drones. Iran can destroy all the tankers in the Persian Gulf if it wants. Right now, it can destroy every single one of them in a couple of hours. It can destroy the oil and gas facilities in the Arab family dictatorships. But Iran doesn't want to do that. So it's shut the Strait of Hormuz. It strikes any ship that doesn't abide by Iran's orders, but it doesn't destroy. And in Iraq, the resistance is doing an excellent job in crushing U.S. capabilities in the Kurdish areas of Iraq, and they are making life for the U.S. occupier very difficult. But if there is escalation, or if the resistance wants to escalate, in Iraq they can do a lot more. In Yemen they can do huge things. And of course, Iran can do much more than it does now. So this is a very sophisticated policy that the axis of resistance is pursuing on the battlefield. Iran is planning for a very long war, even up to the midterm elections in the United States. So everything is being carefully planned. Emotions do not play a role in military planning, whether in Iraq, whether in Lebanon, or in Yemen, or in the Persian Gulf region, or anywhere else.
Very quickly, what's your sense of the Kurds in Iraq in particular? We have heard about the IRGC launching operations against the separatist forces in Western Iran, to which reportedly Donald Trump spoke to. What's your sense of the Kurds in Iraq in particular, given there were official statements that they have rejected Donald Trump's offer to participate in this war?
Well, first of all, we have to make a distinction between Kurds and the groups and the parties. The Kurdish parties, whether those terrorist groups that work against Iran that are based in Iraq, or the Barzani mafia, or the groups in Syria, they are all linked to the CIA and Mossad. But that doesn't mean that popular opinion supports the CIA or the United States or the Israeli regime. So just like in Turkey, the Turkish government is cooperating with Netanyahu and Trump, but public opinion in Turkey is a very different thing. We have to make that distinction. And I think that's more or less true among all these regimes, these Arab dictatorships. Iran has warned them that if you allow these terrorists to be active in Iran, we will destroy you. And the Iraqi resistance, on the one hand, will move in. So Iran and the Iraqi resistance will deal with Barzani and his government in Erbil very swiftly. He will not be able to govern. His regime will collapse very swiftly if he gets involved. He recognizes this. Just like the Aliyev regime in Azerbaijan recognizes that if Iran starts pounding them with missiles, his family dictatorship will be over very swiftly. None of these are powerful entities. Whether the regime in Baku, or the Barzani regime in Erbil, or these tiny Arab family dictatorships, they can easily be destroyed. And what we're seeing in the Persian Gulf is also an indication of that. Iran has shut the oil and gas trade, and there's nothing that they can do about it. So I think that Barzani will probably be very wary about going too far, but then again, he's under a lot of pressure from Trump. I think many in Iraq and many in Iran would like to have an excuse to punish Barzani and Aliyev. Many Azeris in Iran consider the Republic of Azerbaijan to be a part of Iran. And therefore, I think they should be very careful about their behavior in the days ahead. After this war is over and the United States is defeated, if Iran is unhappy with them, then they could have a lot of trouble. And if they do anything foolish now, they could have a lot of trouble even as the war continues. It could bring about the end of their rule.
I wanted to ask you a provocative question, perhaps. Is the global south doing enough? And I'm raising this question, being from the global south. Of course, the role that the Indian government has played has been utterly shameful, and yeah, we can discuss about those things. But on the whole, we raised this question in the middle of the genocide as well, while not putting the blame on the global south because we didn't start this war. But I wanted to still raise the question: is our global south countries collectively doing enough, and what could possibly they do on the face of this blatant aggression by the collective West?
No, definitely they're not doing enough. And I think that individuals, groups, they should boycott Western goods, American goods, obviously Israeli goods. They should protest, they should create awareness. Governments should try to find alternatives to the West because obviously Trump is out of control and he could suddenly turn against anyone. So all countries have to think about protecting themselves. In fact, one of those disgraceful things about these proxies in our region, whether it's Erdogan or Mohammed bin Zayed, or whether it's Sisi or Barzani, it doesn't matter, is that the U.S. ambassador to Israel has basically said what the silent part, excuse me, he said the silent part out loud. And that if the Israeli regime takes the entire region, it's fine. That is the unofficial policy of the United States. And I believe that's the unofficial policy of the collective West. And, but then Erdogan and these, Mohammed bin Zayed and the dictator in Qatar and Sisi and Abdullah in Jordan, all they do is write a letter, a protest. But there's no rebuke from Washington, there's no punishment, nothing. And it's ironic because these, of course, the Syrian government, these entities, or the Syrian Al-Qaeda government, these entities are more a threat than Iran because they're neighbors. They're closer to the Israeli regime than Iran. The Israeli regime dreams of taking the Nile to the Euphrates, from Egypt to Iraq. Iran is not a part of that. But the extraordinary thing is that Iran is trying to stop it, along with its allies in the axis of resistance. And these other regimes are so compromised and so bound to the West that they can do nothing but talk. But people across the global South should be more active. We should be encouraging boycotts. We should be pushing governments to change policy. And I think the Indian government is making a catastrophic mistake because ultimately this region is going to change. And by creating this conflict, the Israeli regime and the United States are effectively the force that are driving up the price of oil. Iran does not want war. Iran was forced into this situation. And so soon you're going to see Indian businesses suffer the consequences. And the growth of the Indian economy could be drastically reduced and it could move into recession, if not depression, if this gets out of hand. Because if this war escalates, have no doubt that all the tankers will be destroyed and that all the oil and gas installations will be destroyed as well. And that will lead to the collapse of the global economy. That's not my saying. I've been saying this for a long time, as you know quite well. But I read on, I think Zero Hedge or somewhere, that the Qatari oil minister said this today or yesterday. So these are the facts. The Israeli regime is willing to sacrifice everyone, the global economy for its own selfish interests. And of course, the leadership in the United States, the elite in the United States, they're bound to Zionism. They're bound to the Epstein class. So they'll sacrifice their own country for the sake of Israel, the interests of their own country, let alone the interests of other countries. And Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf have recognized this. They see that the Americans don't care about protecting them. They only care about protecting the Israeli regime. They're now saying this. But they're too weak and compromised to do much about it.
My final question, and you can be very brief. About a third to one half of our viewers or views come from the collective West, many of whom do not necessarily support the war. Some do. As an Iranian facing this unjust war, what would be your brief or quick message to them?
Everyone is responsible for the slaughter of women and children in Iran, in Lebanon, because they are massacring families in Lebanon. Right now, they're bombing apartment blocks in Beirut and elsewhere, and Western media is calling them Hezbollah strongholds because they're trying to hide the fact that these are atrocities. And of course, we know what's ongoing in Gaza and the West Bank. Everyone is responsible. If they are silent, they have blood on their hands. If they support it, they have blood on their hands. If they resist, if they stand up against this, if they try to create awareness, if in the West they also try to boycott these businesses that are involved in these policies, they are heroes. Doesn't matter if they're in India or in the United States or in Iran or in Burkina Faso or in Albania or Argentina. Doesn't make a difference where people are. Those who stand on the right side of history and stand with the right and who work to help those who are victims, they are all heroes no matter where they are. Everyone else, they're complicit. And if they support this murderous aggression, then they're more than complicit. They're very evil.
Powerful words. We'll leave it there. Professor Marandi, thank you so much for your time and wish you strength and safety.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure and always an honor.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.